All right, and we are live. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Endless Report. This is a special episode once again. It's our holiday episode here with episode 37. We are ending off 2022 with one last episode here before the holidays to get through all the latest gaming news and wrap up what's been a really awesome summer, I should say, really full year of gaming news through 2022. I've been really happy to have this show and to be talking to you all. So it's really been a privilege to be able to do this. So thanks to everyone tuning in here in the chat. Really excited to get started today. So, as far as releases go this week, there's not much going on. Of course, with the holiday season starting, there's not much in terms of games releasing or really big announcements. We do have a few interesting things I think was worth putting on the show today. So, we got as you see in the title, we have a few things to get into here. But starting off, I want to talk about last week's releases with High on Life was the biggest game of last week that actually topped Xbox Game Pass's charts for the year. I thought that was very notable, especially given for a third-party game. And as we talked about last week with Xbox, really one of their only exclusive titles here for Xbox this year. So very, very big move there for Squanch Games. Very interesting to see that. I've seen all the comments here. Appreciate that. But very interesting from them last week. But this week, we want to start off with, unfortunately, some not so exciting news. This comes straight from Epic Games. And the FTC, actually, speaking of the FTC, with all this Microsoft acquisition talks going on in the past few weeks here, the FTC is apparently actively looking at the games industry a little closely here as they're now pointing their target at Epic Games and Fortnite. So as we saw this week, Fortnite was actually sued, as you see on screen, over $500 million. They were fined over Fortnite's quote-unquote unfair microtransactions practices. And as we get into this, the FTC claims, as you see right here in the subtitle, actually, that the Epic Games tricked players with deceptive settings practices, and Epic responds to this news story. So we're getting into it a bit. So as you can see here, it was over $520 million actually to dupe millions of players into making unintentional purchases. This is something we talked about recently on the show a bit, actually, so I won't get too in-depth back into my thoughts on microtransactions and what's going on with that. But the main concern here is that this game is being played by millions and millions of children, especially not just, not that this is only for children, not for adults as well, these scamming practices, but they, according to the FTC, these are very, very misleading pricing practices and specifically target, I believe, younger players and especially privacy concerns as well, not just monetary here. So getting into what the FTC had to say about this, they says Fortnite uses privacy invasive default settings and deceptive interfaces that tricked players. Quote, protecting the public and especially children from online privacy invasions and dark patterns is a top priority for the commission. And these enforcement actions make clear to businesses that the FTC is cracking down on these unlawful practices. So what exactly are these dark patterns they're talking about here? They talk about making unintended in-game purchases, which I said, they say, quote here, counterintuitive, inconsistent, and confusing button configuration. So a lot of in terms of just physical, UI stuff here in the software, specifically, misleading UI. And we can talk about this, but not just on Fortnite, but I think a lot of other games is a serious issue. But they're saying that not only is the UI itself an issue, but that Epic ignored more than 1 million user complaints over mistaken purchases and things of the like, rather, as a result of this what's the word, obscuring UI here. So they're saying that, of course, this means that Epic was probably purposefully obscuring and canceling refund and these types of features to get through with these maybe not so savory business practices here. So kind of going on through more of what FTC says. Of course, this article does reference here the Xbox Activision Blizzard situation as well. But they also go on to say this is not just in terms of microtransactions and those practices, but also in terms of harmful content. So the FTC says here that the Epic employees urged the company to change Fortnite's default settings to require users to opt into voice chat. But the company resisted turning the feature off, even as children were harassed, including sexually, while playing the game. So this one comes, with mostly all online gaming. This is a very serious topic where how do you prevent harassment? You have millions and millions, especially underage players on these platforms, especially on a game like Fortnite, which is, probably the most notable of large scale online, live service games that a lot of kids would be on. There's a few notable ones here. We can talk about Call of Duty as well in a moment, although it's a bit more of a mature audience, but still Fortnite is definitely, the top dog there when it comes to that. And this issue is something that I worry, affects all games, unfortunately, because when you have a public platform like this, you have, unfortunately, bad actors. It is the internet. You're going to have a bunch of people on there gaming, on voice chat, saying whatever they want to. And if you have kids that are unsupervised. There are no parental, guards here. There are no settings to prevent, open voice chat. Unfortunately, as a young kid on Fortnite, you can be exposed to anything, anyone of any age in any part of the world saying whatever they want across that microphone. And as someone who's played online games, for a good amount of my childhood, I was on Xbox Live when Xbox Live was first became like a really big deal. Every kid my age was on at the time, and that was a very adult platform as well. There were not a lot of safeguards. Of course, there are parental restrictions that you could place in as a parent, but especially at the time then too, it's not something that was really thought about a lot. And that's something that you see more and more these days as more and more kids and more parents are aware of what goes on, I think, of these online platforms. But online gaming, just like anything else online, there's constant public discussion. There's public discourse, and unfortunately that leads to adult content, and unfortunately harmful content sometimes, getting into the consoles of unfortunately kids who probably shouldn't be exposed to that sorts of content. So this is a serious accusation here from the FTC to say that Epic did not only condone this, but not only allow this, rather, but condoned it and prevented certain parental controls that were even pitched to them from being implemented. So if that's the case, that is a very damning kind of thing to be said to the company. There's really not much to walk around that on. Although I do think that the reason I think this is notable here is that I think almost every online game could gotta be hit with that same scathing remark. There's not many online games that are immune, unfortunately, to having bad actors in the community. That's with any online community, any social media site. You think of anything like that, any public forum. Unfortunately, you're going to have content that needs to be filtered. There are things that are going to be harmful or just plain out hate speech or harassment of the like you see here in this lawsuit. So again, not that the most fun topic to talk about, but it's very important. And I think it's something I wanted to talk about in the top of the show here because it's definitely a very important lawsuit. And I think one that maybe sets a precedent, for other studios about how they go about filtering these online communities. You've seen recent steps, both I brought before Call of Duty, but this also happened with Overwatch 2, I believe, as well, and some other newer titles where they're requiring two-factor authentication for every single player account. Meaning if you want to play Call of Duty or Warzone, you have to have a cell phone number linked to your personal identity that they can verify it's you. So that's good for security concerns. On the one hand, it's good for some of those monetary concerns with the security of your account and preventing some of those unintended purchases. But on the other hand, here it does prevent players who may be underage, may not be able to verify their 18 plus identity to be away from these communities. And I think that's a good or a bad thing. For one, of course, you want to keep protect these kids and keep them safe. On the other hand, do I think that again, the M rating, it is 18 plus Call of Duty. Well, I admit I've been playing Call of Duty for a pretty long time before I was 18 as well. Yes, can I say that that's most the worst thing in the world? Maybe not so. Maybe the jury's still out on the opinion there about I think that's for every parent to consider with their own child, though. That's the thing here. So I think that it's not up for Fortnite to be misleading, or Call of Duty to be misleading here and working around these practices. But that being said, when they are implemented, there are these pros and cons with that two-factor authentication. Like I said, if you are maybe just playing on a family console or friends, or you aren't 18, or for some reason there really isn't an issue there, but you're comfortable without having these restrictions, it may be limiting there, especially even adults. This isn't just a safety or a parental control feature. If you don't have a cell phone number, if you live in an area that maybe that isn't offered because the two-factor authentication is not offered everywhere, then you may just be out of luck here and can't play the game for no other reason than that. So all these security features come with pros and cons here. Of course, these companies want to be doing the best they can to keep all their players safe. Of course, they want as many players as they can spending and playing their game as well. As what kind of they can be competing interests at times depending on the target audience. But I think this is something that maybe is overdue from the FTC to be checking after these things, because I think a lot of games could get caught on the same thing. Speaking of Call of Duty, this was an issue I had myself, and I don't mind saying it on the stream here, is that when this game first launched, I remember playing with the double XP tokens, and these are things that you can buy in store. You can go to Walmart and spend money on beef, Jack Link's beef jerky, and get double XP as a bonus. These are promotions that have real monetary value tied to them. These in-game bonuses of these extra points and all that. If you don't know what double XP is, just extra points within the game. It doubles the amount of points you're accruing as you play Call of Duty. So there are real monetary values tied to these bonuses. And at the same time, the systems in game, the in-game UI that was built was broken. It was not working. If you wanted to, you can go in and click on all of your tokens at once, activate them all at once, and they would all be running in line while also not stacking on top of each other. So you could waste all of them in one click. There were no safeguards around it. And basically, it's at a certain point, it's not just a glitch, it's a monetary issue because that's losing people money. People are spending real money on these tokens. And when they don't work, or you're literally stealing money digitally from someone's pocket there with no recourse. And there's no refund policy there. There's really not, much you could do if that happens. And it's just a UI malfunction. So not putting any targets in any other game here, but I think that if Fortnite can be sued for this, many other games can. And I'm not just saying Call of Duty as one. There are many other games that have, I would say, maybe less than savory practices when it comes to how they handle their live service and their microtransactions, specifically like the in-game screens, how you can see how many points you have when you purchase points. A lot of times they make it very misleading until the very end when you're hitting that purchase button about how much something costs, maybe how many tokens you have in your menu, and then get into specifics here in the FTC lawsuit. But I don't want to spend too much more time on this. It's a bit negative, but I do think that this is something that every game should be concerned about. Safety issues, monetary issues. This is something that, while I don't think games should be so scrutinized that they can have these monetary practices, I do think there is merit in these business models. I do think they do need to be scrutinized with a bit more certainty here. I think we do need a bit more checking in that these are actually fair practices, because I have seen too much of what you could discredit as just a glitch or some software issue. It really is seemingly intentionally malfunctioning software or intentionally misleading UI systems to get you to purchase or to get you into those situations where you're purchasing things that maybe wouldn't be your initial intent. I think that's really not something I'm a fan of, especially when it comes to a younger audience, and you have these games that something that was usually a problem in the mobile space that I think a lot of great mobile developers have worked around, but there are some unfortunately games in space that are really just built around taking away money, or mining, certain, packs and microtransaction packs in order to progress this gameplay, to progress the game forward. And these games unfortunately tend to prey on younger audiences and kids who are willing to spend more money or ask for their parents' card on their account to do things like that. And I know it sounds like kind of a cliche thing, but it is really unfortunate that does happen quite a bit. And I think that more games should be built around. I'm not saying these microtransactions can't exist. In fact, they are what helps a lot of these games and live service games especially stay alive long term. And I think that could be really beneficial to certain games in the long run. I think having, games like Destiny that people are really big fans of that keep this like ongoing universe. I mean, may not, certain games, may not be others' cups of tea, but it depends on the game. But I think that is an exciting concept. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of these live service games get plagued by these issues. And I hope that going forward, this could not be the case. And hopefully we can have some more, I'm not always the fan of intense legal scrutiny. I like the idea of being able to make the product you want to make. That being said, that when these business practices are being used over and over by several companies in the industry to no real benefit of the consumer whatsoever, it's really just not fair. I don't think it's really right. I worry with this lawsuit, not really worry, but more so if I were a large, maybe publisher of a live service game, I would worry that these games, these practices are being cracked down on now. And I think it's something that you can't just, take the benefit of the doubt that you can get away with here. I think it's, obvious that this is not the best way to go about this. But again, I think I said all of my thoughts on that one. I think we're going to move on to something a bit more interesting here, a bit more kind of funny and more positive here. So moving on to the next story on the docket. As you saw earlier, we have a story from Goat Simulator of all games, actually. This is from Goat Simulator 3, which is actually the second of that game series. A bit of a funny, quirky series. They thought to make a sequel to the first one, they'll call it number 3 for some reason. I'm not sure exactly the reasoning behind the decision, but I think just for the fun of subverting expectations here. But as I pull this up on the screen, we can see the headline that Take-Two, of course, the publisher behind Rockstar Games and Grand Theft Auto, takes down actually a Goat Simulator 3 trailer that just released. As for obvious reasons that you see in the title there, this recent Goat Simulator 3 trailer actually used real footage from that Grand Theft Auto 6 leak we had earlier this year. This is a leak we covered on the show, if you do remember. But if you've been, excited about Grand Theft Auto at all, if you're into, the gaming space or you've seen on Twitter, you probably heard about these leaks earlier this summer. There's a huge amount of data mined from Rockstar, unfortunately, with a ton of in-game, in development clips of Grand Theft Auto 6. I believe these development clips were back from sometime in 2019, so they're about 2 or 3 years outdated. That being said, unfortunately, I did see the clips. I won't comment on them. I won't show anything here. Of course, I won't, don't want to, the same reason that trailer was taken down. We're not going to be showing any of that footage here, of course. That being said, as someone who did see some of it, I think, I'm a player of Red Dead Redemption 2. I've played Grand Theft Auto 5, their previous games. I think it's looking great, especially for an old build of 2, 3 years ago. It looked like an early alpha beta build. I'm not sure what stage of development it is, probably an alpha build at that point, but I think I'm very excited for Grand Theft Auto 6. That being said, that the footage very much in this Goat Simulator trailer was real. It was footage I had seen earlier this summer. And the joke of the trailer was actually through the perspective of an NPC. So if you don't know an NPC, and I explained some of these things on my show because I'm assuming that some of us would be new to gaming here, or these are some of those new concepts. But an NPC is a non-player character in any game. So if you saw that movie recently, a Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds, I still actually haven't seen that, by the way, but some of my family has. He's an NPC in that movie that kind of made the concept a bit more popular with a general audience there. But that being said, this is a kind of similar vibe here through this trailer. Of course, you can't watch it here. It was taken down by Rockstar, but the trailer basically goes through the life of an NPC in this game. So the NPC is saying, hi, I'm forgetting his name. We'll just say, Sean. This is that article. He says, hi, I'm Sean. I'm a Goat Simulator NPC. It's showing him kind of messing around in the game engine. Near the end of the trailer, he makes a joke and says, "This is not my only game I'm in. I'm also doing some other work. I'm in this other game coming up soon." And they show him, they superimpose his character within the Grand Theft Auto 6 leaks, kind of in the background as the character's running around. I thought it was pretty, funny. I think for promotion of this game, a lot of people were arguing, well, this maybe wasn't the best marketing to have this trailer taken down. I think it's exactly the opposite. This is great marketing because now everyone, around who's interested in Grand Theft Auto whatsoever is talking about Goat Simulator because it blew up on Twitter yesterday. It's one of the most trending things in gaming, according to the gaming trends. I think it was #1 at a certain point. So I think, especially you can go find the trailer probably somewhere online. It's being taken down everywhere. I'm not linking that or anything here, but it's probably somewhere you can find. Nothing, too crazy. I kind of just described it there, but I think it is funny. It is a good marketing scheme by Goat Simulator to kind of get people talking about their game. Of course, maybe not the most recommendable thing to do here. Maybe not the most respectful thing to do towards another game. I can't really recommend that, especially given how, detrimental these leaks could have been to the release of Grand Theft Auto 6. I'm obviously interested in that game, excited about that game. So although I will say, I wouldn't do this myself. I wouldn't really condone this, as a publisher. I do think it's definitely creative to say the least on the part here of the Goat Simulator developers. That being said, there's not much else to say because I can't show you the content. I can't show you the trailer without us getting copyright strike by Rockstar as well. So I'm not gonna go anywhere near that. But that being said, hopefully this pressure. I mean, I guess it puts a little pressure here on Rockstar to maybe show something soon. Again, I don't want to pressure. Games are ready when they're ready. But as someone who's just admittedly excited about the next Grand Theft Auto, it's been almost 10 years since Grand Theft Auto 5. Literally, it's been a decade of my life since I bought that game. So very much looking forward to the next entry in the series. We'll see what happens there, but I think maybe, as this stuff like this happens more and more, people continue to talk about those leaks. Hopefully, I'm of course not hoping for another leak or anything, but I'm hoping Rockstar themselves can show us something, maybe a short snippet trailer, something like Grand Theft Auto 5, where there's no gameplay, just an atmosphere kind of thing. I went to college in Miami. I spent a good amount of time in Miami. I know the next game's going to be in Vice City, which is their fictional version of Miami. So I'm pretty excited to see what it looks like in their new next gen version of that world. Of course, there was the old Grand Theft Auto Vice City, but this is kind of a return to that. We're going to see Los Santos, like we saw Los Santos for the second time from San Andreas to GTA 5. Kind of similar thing here with Vice City and GTA 6. So excited to see how it's going to turn out, but that brings me about to the end of that story. As you can see here, kind of taking my time here today as we don't have much on the docket above me. I just wanted to know it's a bit of a shorter show today because of the holidays, so we're probably going to be under the hour. I know I say that sometimes we go over, but today I think certainly we will be under an hour time about. We're going to be wrapping up later on with that Star Wars story, as you may have seen on the cover, but before we get to that, I want to talk a bit more on Hogwarts Legacy, actually, the Harry Potter game. So I'm pulling that up here in a moment. We have, unfortunately, I'm going to do bad news first, good news second. So bad news first, this game was actually delayed. So it is not delayed on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, to clarify. It's going to be coming out on time this February as planned on the next generation consoles. But if you are a last generation player, still are on your PlayStation 4 or on your Xbox One, unfortunately, the game is being pushed back to later this summer. Apparently, there were some issues with the last generation releases. This happens, from time to time with cross-generation games. We saw it actually with Cyberpunk. Of course, there were some other issues with that launch that, we don't have to go over again with that game's launch. But similarly there, the cross-generation launch, there were different development issues for different consoles, unfortunately. And in this case, it's the same here. Whenever you're developing a game for multiple consoles, of course, there can be certain, different needs, excuse me, different needs and different, issues that come up with each, console platform. There are certain quirks that every console, and every system deals with. That being said, on a game like this, where it seems like there is probably a lot of scale and effort into making a next gen experience here, it probably is a slightly different effort to maybe descale some things, maybe re-engineer something slightly differently to be running on these last gen consoles. So it looks like in this case, similarly to some other cross gen launches here, that the game is not going to be coming out on February 10th, like these next generation versions, but will be delayed until July 25th for Nintendo Switch, I believe. I'm going a little bit backwards here, and April 4th for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. So just to clarify, still February 10th for PlayStation 5, Series X, and I'm not sure this game's on PC. I want to clarify that here, but I'm not sure it is. But that being said, next generation consoles still on track for February, but we are waiting until later in the summer for the rest of the last generation releases here. Again, I'm not sure if this game is coming on PC. We meant to clarify that here. I believe it is, though. I'd be shocked if it wasn't, given the Series X and S. And we see here it says +2. And actually, I'm going to look that up in a second. I'm actually going to show you guys some gameplay here in the meantime while I do that, because Hogwarts Legacy, despite the delay this week, got some good news here, and that we also got some gameplay. People were joking about this, that this looked like Red Dead Redemption 2, but with magic, which I think is a compliment, given Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of the best open world games, I think out, in the market, period. So I'm going to play some of this trailer here, some open world kind of free roam gameplay. I may have to refresh the page here because it's kind of timing out on me. Unfortunately, apologies for that, but we'll restart this video here. But as I get that video started, I'll just kind of describe what a bit more on this game. So as I mentioned earlier, things that was kind of described as Red Dead 2, as it is an open world game here. So this is a game where you're not playing as Harry Potter. Again, there's no Harry Potter in the naming here. It's just Hogwarts Legacy. Of course, it's in the Potter universe, but you are, as you can see on screen now, not Harry Potter. You're your own custom character. So this is an own character created, for the sake of this gameplay here by developers. But you can create your own character that is like you. I guess not pick your house, but be put into one of the 4 houses of Harry Potter, and then explore the world freely. So of course, I'm assuming, of course, you could explore Hogwarts. I'm assuming you could explore some other areas. Forgive me here that I'm not the biggest Harry Potter fan. I know, I hate to say that, but I've seen most of the movies. I have not read the books, unfortunately, so I'm not like the most familiar with the outer lands of Hogwarts and what's in the surrounding areas. I know it's different than the main land of Earth and the Muggles and where the regular humans live. So I know there's a bit of a difference there. But in this game, I mean, as you can see here, you can free roam, fly around on a broomstick. I think it seems like pretty cool gameplay here. He's speeding up, so I mean, graphics look great. I think, of course, this is a work in progress footage, but I think it looks really interesting. I love the atmosphere of the open world here. Of course, I'm going to show you some other gameplay really briefly after this one, but there's also some combat, some magical spell combat I'll show in a moment. And of course, you have some of the more cryptic kind of magical areas. I'm not sure what you'd call it, like these like dungeons and caves and these, where you're fighting all these magical monsters. We'll get into that in a second here after I finish this kind of broom gameplay. But unfortunately, again, I wish I could talk more on the specifics of the Harry Potter universe. I wish I had a little bit more knowledge there. But even as someone who's not a diehard Harry Potter fan, this looks really, really cool. I feel like if I was a Harry Potter fan, this game would be a dream come true, to finally have a Harry Potter game in that universe. I could be my own wizard and kind of live that kind of wizarding fantasy yourself. I'm sure that's really exciting for a lot of Harry Potter fans. So this looks super cool. Again, there's a lot more of just him flying around in the broom here. I'm not sure if anything else kind of happens. I think it's him landing. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So you get the landing animation there, fairly smooth. You see this kind of a town square here. I'm not sure exactly what's going on here. It looks like he's playing some magical music with that, with his wand there. So that looks pretty cool. But I'm going to move over here just on screen. We're going to move over to the next gameplay clip I have. Because I actually have some more on this next article. This is the current running in the background. I didn't realize. But I bump back here just a bit, and here you can see some indoor gameplay. It looks like maybe maybe indoors in Hogwarts, where you have your hub and some of your abilities and stuff. I'm not sure exactly where he is now, but again, I apologize for my lack of Harry Potter knowledge. It looks like he is in Hogwarts doing some spells here. And again, maybe I could find something a little bit more interesting. Yeah, he's just decorating his room here at Hogwarts, it looks like. So that actually looks pretty interesting if you want to, add some personal flair to your room and stuff here. A lot more of that gameplay. It looks like this is actually the customization clip because my the gameplay clip I wanted to show you must have played all the way through in the background there while we were talking on the last one. So I'm gonna go back here. Yeah, so that's what happened here. We'll wait for this advertisement for a moment. But yeah, I think this game does look really exciting. I have not much else to say here. We'll show the combat really briefly, and I can talk about the combat very briefly here. I am noticing that my marker on screen wasn't moved down before, so I'm gonna move it down just so we have that here for the gameplay. Just very briefly, although it doesn't really matter too much. But here again, we'll just show you that gameplay. So moving in, we see him caring for the beast. Oh, they must have went through a lot of clips here. This is just taking care of some of the animals. I'm gonna see if there's any more combat here on the side. If not, I will keep clicking back until I get back. Here it is, the Dark Arts Battle Arena. Again, apologies for that. These videos must have been playing in the background as I went through the rest of the news stories talking about that Fortnite story earlier. It's probably when that went through. But we'll wait, another 5 seconds here for that. But looking ahead here, we also have, of course, that Assassin's Creed headline there, as you can see on screen, as well as Star Wars. We're into both of those very briefly, but here we go with that gameplay. So I'll pull this up. And I just wanted to briefly again show kind of like the dungeon, mission quest type gameplay where it looks like he's in this battle arena. One thing I thought was notable about this specific battle arena where it looks like you could train and play against certain enemies in kind of again in a contained arena space. A lot of games have this mode, and I think it's usually a bonus mode or a training mode. One thing I'm not super keen on personally, to be quite honest, is that it looks like this mode is actually exclusive if you pre-order. So the only, or rather, pre-order deluxe edition. So if you want to get this battle arena, you have to get you not only at the pre-order but pay extra. I believe maybe if you just pay extra for deluxe edition after launch, you can probably do the same. I'm not sure how I feel about that, especially given it's just a training mode to help you get better with the gameplay. Of course, you could argue that there's these extra challenges here, maybe some sort of extra enemy types and stuff. With it, I'm not fully versed in the extent of all of the features in this arena mode here, but I do think that maybe that's something that should have been included within the game. That being said, I'll get to that in a minute again with Star Wars because we talked about it on the last stream with those pre-order bonuses. I'll just say now because we already discussed it on the show that a lot of the costumes in that Star Wars game, they had an Obi-Wan costume, a Luke costume, a Han Solo, were all, hidden behind either the pre-order or deluxe edition, banner there. So I'm not always the biggest fan of that stuff. That being said, a lot of times this kind of content will be released, for everyone who owns the game later on, 6 months after launch, maybe a year after launch. And that's fine. That's great too. At least you're getting it eventually. But again, it's usually around the time where a lot of people who played at launch or were excited about the game maybe had already played through. That doesn't really matter as much to them at that point unless you're buying the game fresh. So not the biggest fan of that. But then again, at least it can help us here show off some of the Hogwarts gameplay. Does look pretty interesting. It doesn't look like a lot of different just spell types being cycled around here. You see you have the kind of weapon wheel on the bottom with 4 different types of spells he's cycling through to attack the enemies here with. It looks like the right trigger is used to swap there. I'm not sure exactly what button they're using to attack. I'm guessing probably square, circle, probably a face button, given that R2 is the swap. That being said, looks pretty interesting. Again, maybe not the biggest Harry Potter fan here. I'm not sure if I'll be picking this up day one. I may wait on it and see how I feel. But if you're a Harry Potter fan, I would definitely keep an eye out for this one for sure. Again, that comes out February 10th. But if you are on the last generation of PlayStation 4, Xbox One, then you're going to have to wait a little bit longer until April. I believe April 4th there. So that being said, I bet wraps it up for Hogwarts Legacy for me today. We're going to talk a bit more now on that Assassin's Creed news. So I'm going to move us down here as we get onto that article. Give me 1 second here as I pull that article up for Assassin's Creed Jade. So this one is a bit different here. This is not, again, just to clarify, this is not Assassin's Creed Mirage coming out next fall for consoles. This is Assassin's Creed Jade coming to mobile consoles. This is based in China where you actually create your own assassin. So we covered this back on the Assassin's Creed Infinity stream a few weeks back when that aired on the show. And not much is known about this game other than you customize your own character. It's a bit more melee based and it seems to be a bit more RPG based, kind of similar to some other, Assassin's Creed games we've had in recent memory here. Think Odyssey or Origins and that kind of RPG based gameplay. Less so than the other, I believe, there's another Assassin's Creed mobile game in the works, and the other past Assassin's Creed mobile games that have been more so in lines with, I think, the older traditional kind of stealth based gameplay here. But getting into this, of course, as you see in the headline, we have a full leak of the game, about a minute or so of gameplay, showing a short amount of traversal, a bit of story dialogue here, and then also some combat gameplay. Again, this is a mobile game. I believe this was captured on an iPhone here. so I'm not sure if we could show this. Again, I struggle. I refrain here from showing the gameplay on stream because I don't want to get striked on any copyright strikes here, so it is blurred out. I was considering maybe just doing it, but the more I think about this here, I don't want to. Both out of respect for the game and the developers, and out of respect for our programming here and everything like that. I don't want to create any conflicts here with the copyright of this game. So I will say, that this is very accessible. As you can see, I looked up an article. It is very much in the article on GameSpot here. So I'm not publishing this myself, although you will have, all my articles are always linked, but I don't want, this is something that I will say you could go find yourself online, but I'm not going to show during the show today, unfortunately. That being said, I think it was worthy of noting that, unfortunately, a lot of games are getting leaked these days, but this game looked ready. This game looked very, far along in development. I would say it's within the next few months here, we're going to see some news on this game's release for mobile. It looked very interesting. I'm not the biggest mobile gamer to be honest, but the mobile gaming market is gigantic. It's probably the biggest sector of the entire gaming market. And I think a lot of people who maybe don't have a console, maybe can't get Assassin's Creed, or maybe even aren't, aware of Assassin's Creed in the same, way because of that, can get access to this franchise in maybe a fun and exciting way. Again, we'll have to see how it works with you having your own customizable protagonist, what goes on there. But I think that could be really cool for Assassin's Creed game. And I'm sure that you'll have probably customizable gear and different clothing options and stuff like that go along with customizing your character. Again, unfortunately, I can't show you that gameplay, so not much else to say there. But we are going to move on to our final story today. It'll probably wrap us up here before the end of the hour. And no pun intended there with the holidays, wrapping it up here. That is, of course, Star Wars Jedi Survivor. So you may have seen that little quick Photoshop I put on the thumbnail here today, where I kind of compared this game a bit to Ghost of Tsushima. And the reason I did that is because we got a few more details here this week, specifically from Game Informer. So I'm kind of excited in this because I subscribe to Game Informer. I'm hoping maybe we got a cover next month with Jedi Survivor on the cover. We'll see. Maybe I just didn't get my issue yet in the mail. But they go in depth here in this article. Nothing too crazy here, but very interesting that the combat system is going to be very much in line with having different stances. So you haven't played Ghost of Tsushima, and I'm going to show that game actually in a moment here. That game's combat system is based on, you have 4 different stances. I'm actually going to throw it up right here. I think it's actually better if I show this first before we get into the Star Wars details. So then we have the context for what I'm talking about there. But first of all, I do want to give credit to the YouTube video I'm using here. This is Boomstick Gaming. I will link this in the description as well, but shout out to that channel. Appreciate just demonstrating the combat stances here in Ghost of Tsushima. This is very helpful. So there's a few different stances here. There's actually 4 different types. They're called the stone stance. And as I scroll through, you see stone, water, wind, and moon. And these are all different fighting styles that you can play in this game when you're going to different enemies. So if you're using the stone stance, it's usually for another enemy with a sword, or your fast, blocking strikes, very similar to what a lightsaber, I think, might be used as. He's blocking very directly as he's stabbing and swinging strikes. And I'm not going to get too into melee combat here on the show or the intricacies of swinging a sword, but I do think it's notable to understand what we're going to talk about here today with Star Wars. So there's multiple styles. We get into that first one. Then we have the water stance, and hopefully this video, that my internet here will cooperate with me. We are streaming and we are loading a video at once, so hopefully I can load this here. But if not, unfortunately, if that is going to move on, we will see. Okay, so now we can see you get kind of like this swinging sideways motion with the shield stance here, and the shield stance is more of like, I guess, again, faced against shield enemies. I believe they call it the water stance because you're swinging around the shield. Then if I can go to the wind stance, this is for more like long enemies with spears, and you're kind of like jumping around and dodging the spear movements. And if that's not going to load, I'll maybe just go to the moon stance here. Fortunately, I wish this was cooperating a bit easier here. But in the moon stance, you see these large kicking motions. It's for these big, like brute-like enemies. And you can see he's doing a lot of these, like, again, it's really buffering. Unfortunately, we're not getting that connection. So I'm gonna move on from the YouTube video. We're gonna leave it at that because unfortunately it's not really cooperating. But that being said, that's the Ghost of Tsushima combat system there. Just a little bit of a taste of it through that Shopee video. But if you can kind of understand what I was getting at there, when you're playing that game, depending on what kind of enemy you see, you could switch up your fighting style and how you swing your sword to respond accordingly. It makes the gameplay much more exciting than just smashing the attack button. When oh, here's a guy with a shield, let me do my underhand shield swipe swing, and you have about almost a dozen different moves then, because now you have 4 different move sets. You have a heavy, not a dozen, but about 8 to 10 depending on the combos and everything else. So around a dozen, I guess, with the combos, but you have 4 different move sets. You have a heavy and light attack on each. You have dodges on each that all combine to make different types of combinations. So you really have multiple fighting styles, and that game stays interesting, at least to me, for a much longer time than I would have, because you have a lot more dynamic combat. And combined with the atmosphere of that game, I think it really makes the game for me. I think the combat is my favorite part of that game, probably. So the reason I was excited about this for Star Wars is because we get a lot of details in this article that basically reiterate that this game is going to have a very similar combat stance system. And I believe they say they may have 5 fully realized stances, not 4 like in Ghost of Tsushima. They say 5 fully realized stances in the game, which is pretty exciting. Of course, just like Ghost of Tsushima, he says here, it fully depends a lot on the enemies you're coming across. It's advantageous to use certain types of stances, against certain types of enemies. It's up to the player to figure that out, though. It requires the player to break down the enemies and figure out what the best weapon of choice is. Very similar to Ghost of Tsushima. I'm very much a big fan of that. It adds a little more challenge, a little more thinking to the combat. You're just thinking, oh, there's 5 enemies around me. Oh, I should attack this guy first, then this one. No, there's an enemy over there. He has a shield. There's a bow and arrow over there. This person's gonna charge me with a sword, so maybe I should, swing this way, then use this special roll attack to dodge the arrow. It makes everything much more complex, much more interesting. And I find that it's very exciting. As someone who, don't get me wrong, I didn't have much problems with Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, the first game's combat. Very much, like Dark Souls, Soulsborne-esque. Very much, I enjoyed the parry systems, the dodging, the combat. My only concerns with the original combat was I would have liked maybe a little more fluidity, maybe a little more damage with the lightsaber. Again, I can't complain too much there. I know it isn't an M-rated game either. You can't really be chopping people in half with the lightsaber either, but when you're fighting a stormtrooper like in the game, and it takes a bunch of different, a bunch of hits with the lightsaber, you don't really feel as much like that Jedi in the movie who has like that powerful laser sword, because you do have to kind of do it over and over, and it does feel a little video gamey, like you're or spongy, as a lot of people use for as a video game term there, where you have to do it a little bit more damage than you would think. That being said, I feel like with the combination of these fighting styles, I think maybe with harder difficulties as well and stuff, I think I'm gonna get to a place where I'd really enjoy the combat here. I'm excited to see more gameplay from this game. We're gonna have to wait and see, but it's not too far off. We only have a few more months here until the release, so definitely a lot to look forward to with that. But just to kind of like summarize everything in the article here, because it is a bit lengthy. We do have this screenshot from the trailer. There was a tweet I did bring up. This from Shinobi over on Twitter, who usually summarizes a lot of things like this very well. But just to clarify on those fighting stances, there's 5 fighting stances, as I said. There's also the dual blade and the lightsaber and blaster combo, which adds new ranged attacks, which I guess maybe is the 5th fighting style. Maybe that it's like a range style, or maybe the ranged attacks are just incorporated throughout all 5 fighting styles, which would be really cool as well. But then again, you do have a blaster here, so I'm wondering how they're gonna maintain the blaster gameplay. Like, if you could just, there's always enemies around you, and you're like, how am I gonna take them out with my sword? You just take the blaster and just start firing. Maybe there's a cooldown on the blaster. Maybe there's some sort of meter they have to recharge it. Maybe it wouldn't be super canon friendly for Star Wars, given that they can just fire their blaster as much as they want. I was gonna say blazer, their blaster, laser blaster, whatever you want to say there in Star Wars. But whatever it is, there's really no cooldown per se in the movies, at least. In the video games, like in the Star Wars Battlefront and some other ones, they deal with that by adding a cooldown. So instead of reloading, you have to let your weapon kind of recharge its plasma for 5 seconds or so. I could totally see them adding that kind of element, and it would kind of make sense that the weapons do have to breathe at a certain point if they're overheating with all that plasma laser energy. There's some sort of science fiction reasoning to that for sure. So I think if they have that kind of mechanic, and it's not too overpowered with the sword gameplay, but it can kind of meld in well, I think this game can be really, really interesting. I think of like Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, going back to kind of the Soulsborne type games where it had very fast parry, based gameplay for sure, but he also had that little musket. And I haven't played Sekiro, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but definitely Bloodborne for sure. But I don't know why I feel like that's in Sekiro as well. Forgive me if I'm mistaken there. But I think it's very, very, very cool idea here. You could also tame and ride mounts. You can have various animals, maybe a tauntaun, like in Hoth, of course, and from The Empire Strikes Back. But who knows what other animals? Sure, lots of very different, interesting type alien type creatures, I'm sure. They say for a wider Metroidvania type approach. So one of the big, I think other complaints with the first game, and not that there were a ton of complaints with the first game, because people really did enjoy it. I think it was a very much like a kind of a sleeper hit for a lot of people. A lot of people didn't expect to enjoy it as much as they did, I think. But I think one of the smaller concerns with it, given, was maybe I would say like a smaller game in some sort of scale, I think is what some people said, where you play these large map, these linear based, map settings for each, planet. Not much of an open, linear open world, like think of like God of War, where it's very much linear, but they are these open spaces. It's more so very directed into like these hallway spaces, like you think a traditional linear single player game. That being said, you can backtrack in a lot of missions. You'll have to backtrack to get back to your ship, and a lot of times you're just going through all the same hallways that you took to get to the end of the dungeon or the quest of the mission in the beginning, and now you're just retracing your steps in complete silence and kind of just going all the way back the way you came. It's not always the most exciting thing to do. So I think that, here it seems like with the idea of having mounts, there's probably more open areas. There's probably more side little collectibles and maybe little side objectives to collect on these planets. And it seems like it's less of like retrace your exact path back from the end objective of the mission, but more so like that you made your way through the semi-open world through that linear path. And now you can, I'm sure go back in a more organic way to your ship. If you're still doing that, going back to the ship and flying around type central gameplay loop like the first game. Again, I use God of War or even The Last of Us, Last of Us Part 2, really, and a lot of sections, or Uncharted 4, another good example of that, to compare where I feel like it can go a little bit more on we're still very much linear, but has that open sense of the open level space. I think that'd be a really smart move. Not that the first game didn't have that per se, but as I said, it had that very much like retrace your steps, kind of one long hallway type feel to a lot of the levels, at least in my opinion. But don't get me wrong, I really did love Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I'm very excited for Jedi Survivor, and it seems like all of what they're addressing here is improving all of those little detail oriented kind of things that I have issue with. So it seems like a lot of great stuff here, a lot of quality of life improvements, and of course, with a sequel like this, you don't have to do all the legwork of building the entire game from the ground up. You now have that awesome first game to build off of that base. So it seems like they're building a lot of awesome, cool new features on top of it. I'm super excited. I think I said when we first saw this trailer at the Game Awards, I'm like, I want to see more. Not that it wasn't great or anything. There were some great little shots there, but it was so quick. It was, I feel like I only watched it once or twice, so maybe I didn't really go in depth. But the more I saw some more, in-depth analyses and people showing these screenshots and getting more into what they saw in the trailer, the more and more I'm seeing how much more in depth this game looks, the more I get excited about it. So I did want to reiterate that on the show today as we covered it again, that I may have not been the most impressed when I said on my Game Awards stream, but I think I did say that I was like, maybe I just want to see more though. I'm really intrigued, but definitely, I've seen a bit more here, maybe just heard more here, but what I heard got me even more excited. I've seen a bit of what I saw already in that trailer again. So I will say, rest assured, I am pretty excited for this game at this point in time. But that being said, there's a lot to be excited about. It is the holiday season, and unfortunately, we're getting towards the end of our show here. So I do want to say to everyone who has watched, not just today, but throughout the entire year, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for watching the Endless Report. It's been such a pleasure to do this. It's almost surreal to me sometimes that I get to do this as part of my job. So I'm really thankful for all you who watch, those of you who watched. I'm really just so happy to be doing this. So I want to just say, as we wrap up our 2022, it's going to be the last show. We're not going to have one over the New Year's break here. We are going to be off on that next Friday. So I do want to just say thank you for an amazing year. If you are celebrating the holidays here, I want to wish you a happy holidays. I'm celebrating Christmas this weekend, so I want to wish you Merry Christmas to everyone who is. Anyone who's celebrating any other holiday, happy holidays to you. And I wish everyone a happy New Year, especially. I just want to thank you all again so much. It's been a great 2022, and hopefully we have much more to come in 2023. I know there's a ton to be excited about here at Endless. I'm super excited. So much to be excited about in gaming as well. And I hope that if you're just getting into gaming or you've been into gaming for a while, I hope that you're as excited about this stuff as I am. So not just get into more games, maybe learn more this year as well. There's so much stuff they're going to be doing at Endless. I'm excited not only to be, maybe involved in some stuff we're learning and teaching here but all of you to be learning so much more about games. So I just want to thank you all again. As you can tell, I'm just very, very, grateful to be here. It's been so awesome to be doing this with you all. And I want to thank you to everyone who's stuck with me through the summer, through the fall, everything like that. It's been really, really, really awesome. So again, I know I'm probably reiterating myself here. So thank you so much again. I will see you in the new year in 2023 with more news from the Endless Report. Hopefully more exciting stuff to come in the coming months here. But that being said, once again, happy holidays. Have a very, very happy new year. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you all very, very soon. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.